fourth miracle of Jesus is recorded in the Bible in John chapter 6. The miracle was done primarily to show that Jesus is the bread of life, through feeding 5,000 followers with just a few morsels of food. Jesus and his disciples had just crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee. They were seeking a brief space of seclusion and repose, but the hope of having such was in vain. A great crowd had followed them because they had seen the signs Jesus performed by healing the sick. Then Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with his disciples. In John 6:5, Jesus looked up and saw the great crowd before him. He said to the disciple Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked Philip this to test him, for Jesus already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him in verse 7, it would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each of them to have a bite. Verses 8 to 9 notes that the disciple Andrew spoke up, saying, "Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish, but how far will they go among so many?" The question rises in Jesus' mind of how he was going to provide for the 5,000 people. The crowd was not hungry yet. They had not thought where their food was to come from. But Jesus cared for the careless, and his heart was prophetic of their necessities and quick to determine what he should do to supply them. To solve the problem, Jesus conducted his fourth miracle. Realizing there was not enough food to feed everyone, Jesus, in John 6:10, tells the disciples to make the men in attendance sit down. He then takes the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed to the disciples several filled baskets. He tells them to give the loaves and fishes to all the seated audience members. When they were filled, Jesus tells his disciples in John 6:12 to gather up the remaining fragments of food, that nothing be lost. When they had brought the fragments back to near Jesus, there remained 12 baskets with all the food, which contained over and above what the 5,000 had eaten, all from 5 barley loaves and 2 fishes. Many of the men there, when they had seen the miracle Jesus did, said in verse 14, "Surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world." As I said earlier, we see in the account of the fourth miracle, Jesus hoping Philip would have a better answer when he asked him where they could find bread to feed everyone. Jesus was, I'm sure, hoping that his question to Philip might have shaped itself in the hearer's mind into a promise. He wanted Philip to have faith to believe that he actually was the bread of life. Philip should have replied to Jesus, "Thou canst supply, we need not buy." Christ still tests all his believers even until today. He puts problems before us to probe our responses to certain situations. Jesus wants to see if we can rise above the level of the material and visible, or whether all our conceptions of possibilities are tied to these. And sometimes, even though the question at first sight seems to evoke a response similar to Philip's answer, many times it works more deeply down afterwards, and we profit and grow from the very difficulty we're facing and rise to a clear faith. Philip probably thought his answer that they didn't have enough food for the 5,000 was the right answer. He was a man of figures. He believed in what could be calculated on tables and stats. But Philip left out one small element in his calculation, and that was Jesus Christ and what he was capable of doing. In John 6:27-29, Jesus tells his disciples, "Do not work for food that spoils, but for food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. For on him God the Father has placed his seal of approval." Then they asked him, "What must we do to do the works God requires?" Jesus answered, "The work of God is this, to believe in the one he has sent." Then verses 32-35, where Jesus said unto them, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, Moses gave you not that bread from heaven, but my Father giveth you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is he which cometh down from heaven, and giveth life unto the world." Then said they unto him, "Lord, evermore give us this bread." And Jesus said unto them, "I am the bread of life. He that cometh to me shall never hunger, and he that believeth on me shall never thirst." This is H.A. Graves.